So Gen 1 to us means it is a brand new customer that has never worked with an MSP before, so a master service program. So for them, it's brand new, stating that they don't understand how this works. The example would be you have multiple suppliers, multiple agencies that you're working with, multiple contracts. I can think of one where it was a pharmaceutical company and they were really candid and transparent with us of saying, it's hard for us to track contracts. Hiring managers have direct relationships with specific agencies. So they have these one-off relationships. And so they really wanted to be able to centralize everything and in essence have one contract, be able to have one point of contact on the Eastridge side, which is the designated program manager. And again, we have a designated director to say, can you speak on our behalf and be able to have those relationships with the suppliers, but also use one system to be able to track any open positions, we call them requisitions. So any open orders to see the reporting that comes from that to say, okay, how long is a requisition open? How long does it take to fill? Also be able to say, okay, we track spend. We want to be able to track spend. This customer has purchase orders and want to be able to track. We have purchase orders. When are we running low on funds? What does this look like?
They did not have a good way of tracking contracts. Some contracts lived in their contract portal, some were outside, and there wasn't a consolidated place where contracts lived or a consistent contract that was being utilized. What happened was they provided us with a worker roster and subsequently the suppliers that they were with. It ended up being narrowed down to 47. However, I think it was more than that when we initially received this roster. So what we were able to do with this client that didn't have most contracts, it didn't understand how suppliers were being utilized. Were they true staff aug? Were they professional services? Were they 1099? What we did for them was we looked at that list and we did our research for them. We were able to turn that back into the client and say, this is where we think your contingent workforce sits in terms of different types of buckets. So from there, I want to say maybe upwards towards 100 different vendors that were being utilized. We were able to dwindle that down to potential 47, which ended up turning into maybe only 12 at the end of the day. However, through our efforts as an implementation and program team, we were able to take that off of the client's plate, given we knew how their internal structure was and the reason why they were moving to an MSP to really help us streamline and add that value back to them, given the limited resources on their team and inability to do it themselves, and make sure that things where suppliers are being bucketed correctly and classified correctly.
After the implementation, we do send out a retrospective survey. So when we complete the implementation, we do reach out to the customer to ask for their feedback. And we really ask for them to be really transparent and honest because we want to learn what are the things we did well and what are the things that we can improve on. And I will say this customer gave us raving reviews because they were really appreciative of all the details that we wanted into the implementation, all the questions we asked, being able to support them from beginning to end. And also to understand that it takes time to build this. It takes time to create it, but they were really invested to make this done correctly. So it goes back to the question of what is a successful implementation? When you have buy-in from the customer and they really want to make sure if there is change management, to be bought into the change management, to see it through to say, this will be a better product at the end. And so this is where we were really successful with them because it even led to additional support from them. So the customer came back to us and said, okay, great. You can prove and show that you completed this implementation. Now we're adding more layers. Now we have additional things that we need. For example, they came to us and said, okay, let's start looking into maybe some global solutions for the program. So we take that as a win, especially because they gave us feedback from a survey, but in addition, added additional services that they needed for us to support.
A lot of it depends on the industry. And so as we talk about pharma or med device, compliance is extremely important to them to make sure that they know exactly who they have, where they're at, what they're doing. And this particular client we've been talking about did not have a good sense of that. And sometimes the need to move to an MSP solution with technology is really driven by some sort of event that's occurred. Perhaps it's an audit, perhaps they've been requested to provide information to a third party or a partner, and they've really struggled to be able to identify who was involved and who was out there. And so oftentimes that can be a catalyst. And when you really look at this particular client, once we got through the implementation and we were able to say, okay, this is the current picture of your contingent workforce today. This is who you have and where they are and what they're doing and all of that, that in and of itself is a huge benefit to these companies that may struggle with providing the necessary documentation for a compliance audit. The nice thing is that the solution is we're starting to evolve it and we're starting to talk about preparing our first business review with this client, which is really going to not only outline the success of the implementation and the visibility and the compliance audits and those sorts of things, but then we'll be able to start delivering financial information to be able to document the savings, the consistency across pricing, the cycle time, and what's involved in actually getting a worker from request to first day in the seat performing, and then really looking at the performance. That's the fun part about it is that the implementation, and once the solutions go live, by no means done. That's like the very first step of the relationship. And so to have such positive reviews on what we've accomplished just initially, we met that client's needs. Their primary needs were just, we need to understand who we have. Now there's so much we're going to be able to bring forward, which is what's really exciting for us operationally once we get beyond the implementation.